All right, let's jump right in. Today we're diving into some serious religious controversy, a split within the International Churches of Christ, and we've got this letter here from the RCW, the Restored Churches Worldwide, firing back against some pretty hefty accusations from the ICC.
Yeah, the ICC is claiming the RCW was falsely disfellowshipped, which is a pretty loaded term in this world, right?
Oh, it's huge. Disfellowship in these groups is not like just disagreeing on a few things. It impacts everything. Social ties, support systems. It can really turn someone's life upside down.
Yeah.
And the RCW, they open their letter with a quote from John 16:1-2, where Jesus talks about being put out of the synagogue facing persecution. It seems like they're saying this is about way more than just theology.
For sure. It's like they're drawing a parallel to those early Christians who had to break from the established religious order to follow Jesus. And the RCW even uses John 12:42 to argue that they chose to leave. It's not just any random verse. It's very strategically chosen.
So they're not saying, we just decided to leave. They're framing it as a necessary separation for the sake of truth. Like, we're not rebels, we're reformers. But how do they square that with all the emphasis in the Bible on unity within the church?
Well, they address that head on. They argue that unity should never come at the expense of truth. It's like saying, yeah, unity is important, but so is standing up for what you believe is right and true. They're not shying away from that tension.
And they bring in a bunch of scripture to back that up. Colossians, Ephesians, John Corinthians.
Yeah.
It's like they're building a whole biblical case for why division, while not ideal, can be necessary.
And what I find fascinating is how the RCW doesn't just disagree with the ICC's doctrines, they actually question the ICC's motives. They even accuse the ICC leadership of being driven by power and control.
Ooh, that's getting into some spicy territory.
Yeah.
It's like they're comparing the ICC to historical religious persecution. But they do back it up with some interesting arguments.
Yeah, one of the key concepts they use is geminism, this idea that even in religious organizations, you can have competing factions vying for power and influence. They're basically saying true Christianity should be above these power struggles, but the ICC has fallen prey to them.
So they're painting a picture of an organization more concerned with holding on to power than seeking truth is truth. It's a pretty bold statement, and they don't stop there. They also address this whole thing about the ICC saying they're not growing, that they haven't had a lasting impact.
And this is where they get really specific. They bring out the stats, breaking down their growth in different regions like Australia, Europe, Latin America. They talk church plants, growth percentages, and even compare it all to the ICC's overall numbers.
It's like they're saying, don't just take our word for it. Here's the proof. They even challenge the ICC to release their stats for a fair comparison.
Yeah.
It almost feels like they're calling the ICC's bluff.
It definitely has that feel. And they go even further by suggesting that the ICC actually has a built-in advantage when it comes to resources. They say the ICC has an easier time sending disciples to different regions and keeping a bigger chunk of contributions.
So they're implying they're actually doing better than the ICC, even with fewer resources.
Yeah.
It's a subtle way of saying, imagine what we could do with a level playing field.
Exactly. They're highlighting the reality of building a religious movement. It's not just about theology, it's about logistics, resources, spreading your message.
So we've talked about their defense against this false disfellowship accusation. We've looked at their biblical reasons for the split, their take on the ICC's motives, and even their pushback against claims that they're not growing. But they also get pretty personal about the accusations against them, don't they?
They do. And this is where the tone shifts a bit. They address the claims that they left the ICC for personal gain or with bad intentions. They're pushing back against the idea that they're motivated by anything other than a genuine desire to follow what they believe is true.
It's like they're saying, you're assuming the worst about us instead of giving us the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. They even mention a specific meeting invitation. They say the ICC never responded to using it as an example of the ICC not being willing to talk things through.
So they're adding another layer, saying, we tried to talk about this to work things out in a healthy way, but you weren't interested. And then to back up their argument, they go to scripture, citing 1 Corinthians 4:6, which says, you shouldn't judge motives. It's a powerful reminder that we can't really know what's going on in another person's heart. That's a big theme throughout the Bible, the idea that only God can truly judge a person's heart. But this is where I think it gets really interesting. The RCW's closing argument. It's all about judging by fruits. They've been hinting at it all along, but now they really dig in.
This is where they bring out the big guns,
Yes.
scripturally speaking. They use that classic analogy of judging a tree by the fruit it produces. They even quote passages like Matthew 7:18-20 and Luke 11:19-20, very vivid and memorable verses.
They're basically saying, look at the lives we're changing, the communities we're building, the good we're doing. That's the true test of our faith. not what the ICC is saying about us.
And they don't stop there. They give actual examples of the positive growth in conversions they've seen in their ministries, contrasting that with what they see as negativity coming from the ICC. It's a bold move, but they back it up with stories and details.
It's like they're saying, our actions speak louder than the ICC's words. And then they finish with a really powerful invitation. They encourage anyone who's unhappy with the ICC to come join them.
It's a bold ending, and it leaves us with a lot to think about. But we're going to have to pause there for a moment. It's wild how this letter isn't just about them saying, we're not falsely disfellowshipped. It's like they're taking this whole idea of division in a religious group and turning it inside out.
Right. They really go after this accusation that they created an ungodly division. And get this, they use the ICC's own definition of ungodly division to argue their case.
Yeah, that's pretty clever. They point to this passage on the ICC website that talks about divisions coming from like selfish interests or going against the Bible's teachings. And then they're like, hold on, our separation is based on what we believe the Bible truly says.
It's a total reversal. It's like,
yeah.
No. We're not the ones causing ungodly division. We're the ones actually trying to stay true to the scriptures.
Exactly. And they even bring up examples from the Bible where Jesus himself caused division, like when he called out the Pharisees and challenged the religious leaders of his day.
Whoa, that's bold. They're basically saying, if Jesus wasn't afraid to shake things up, why should we be?
Right. It's like they're reframing the whole narrative, saying sometimes division is necessary to break free from hypocrisy and false teachings. And this leads to another really interesting concept, and they introduce this idea of geminism.
This is where they get into the whole power dynamics thing, right? Like how power plays can happen even in religious organizations.
Exactly. They argue that true Christianity should be above all those worldly power struggles. But this tendency towards geminism, it can sneak into any group, even a church.
So they're implying that the ICC might be more focused on staying in control than actually seeking truth and unity, which is a pretty serious claim. But they do back it up with examples from the Bible.
Yeah, like John the Baptist. They say he wasn't trying to build his own following or compete with Jesus for power. He was all about humility and putting others first.
It's almost like they're drawing a contrast between John the Baptist and the current ICC leaders.
They are, and then they go on to address these accusations of heresy and false doctrines. They say, look, we're just upholding what the Bible really teaches while the ICC has strayed from those core teachings.
So what are some of the specific theological disagreements that cause this whole split? I know we don't have the ICC's letter, but the RCW does hint at some of those points, right?
One of the main things seems to be how they interpret Scripture. The RCW says the ICC is twisting or misinterpreting certain passages to fit their own agenda.
Which is a pretty common accusation in religious debates. But the RCW takes it a step further. They actually accuse the ICC of using half-truths and lies to manipulate people.
Yeah, the language gets pretty strong. It's a reminder that this isn't just an abstract theological debate for the people involved. This is about their faith, their community, their sense of belonging.
Absolutely. It shows you how deeply personal and emotional religious beliefs can be.
And how even within the same religious tradition, you can have completely different interpretations of the Bible and different ideas about what it means to be faithful.
Which brings up a really important question.
Yeah.
How do you figure out what's true and what's false in a religious group? Both the ICC and the RCW believe they're right. So how do you even begin to navigate that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a question that's been around for centuries. But I think the RCW offers some interesting perspectives on how they approach it.
Like, they don't just focus on theological arguments. They also emphasize looking at the fruits of a group's teachings. It's something they've talked about throughout the letter, but they really bring it home in their final points.
Right. This is where they bring in those big biblical ideas. They talk about judging a tree by its fruit. They even quote passages like Matthew 7.1820 and Luke 11.120. You know, those verses about good trees bearing good fruit and bad trees bearing bad fruit.
It's a powerful image that anyone can understand, regardless of their religious background. And they're basically saying, look at what we're doing, the communities we're building, the lives we're changing. That's the real measure of our faith, not what the ICC is accusing us of.
Exactly. They're not just saying it either. They actually give concrete examples of the positive impact they've had. They talk about specific instances of growth and people coming to faith within their ministries.
They even contrast their positive work with what they see as negativity from the ICC, which is pretty bold.
Yeah.
But it's all part of their argument that actions speak louder than words.
And then they end their letter with this really powerful invitation. They encourage anyone who's unhappy with the ICC to come join them. It's like a call to action, a direct appeal to people who are looking for something different.
It is. It's like they're saying, If you're searching for a community that truly lives out his faith in a real and meaningful way, we're here. And what I find most compelling is how they connect this all back to the idea of fruits.
They're saying, don't just take our word for it, look at the evidence. Look at the actual changes we're making in the world.
It's a strong argument for sure.
Well,
And it really makes you think about how we judge religious groups. It's not just about what they say, it's about what they do
yeah,
and the real impact they have on people's lives.
absolutely. And I think the RCW raises some really important questions about authority in religious groups and the balance between unity and allowing for different opinions.
It also makes you wonder about the challenges of interpreting the Bible and how different groups can come to such different conclusions from the same text.
That's a debate that's been going on for centuries. But maybe by listening to these different perspectives and really examining our own beliefs, we can get a little closer to understanding faith and its role in our lives.
You know, as we're going through this letter, it's striking how the RCW uses all these specific examples to really back up their claims against the ICC.
Yeah, they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. Like when the ICC accuses them of being this failing movement with no real impact, the RCW doesn't just get defensive. They come back swinging with hard numbers about their growth.
Yeah, they break it down by region, Australia, Europe, Latin America, giving actual numbers for churches they planted, the percentage of growth. And they even compare it all to how the ICC is doing overall. It's like a direct challenge.
It is. It's like they're saying, look, don't just believe what you hear. Here are the facts. And they even suggest that the ICC has an advantage when it comes to money. You know, being able to send people out to different places more easily and keeping a larger share of the donations. It really makes you think about the logistics of building a movement. It's not just about faith, it's about resources and strategy too.
And then they shift gears a little. They address the accusations that they left the ICC for selfish reasons or with bad intentions. It's like they're saying, hey, you're judging us without really trying to understand where we're coming from.
Right, and they even bring up this specific invitation to a meeting that they say the ICC ignored, which makes it seem like the ICC wasn't even open to talking things out, you know, having a real dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It adds another layer to the whole thing. It's like they're saying, look, we tried to make this work, but you weren't interested. And to make their point even stronger, they bring in a passage from the Bible, 1 Corinthians 4.6. It warns against judging people's motives, because only God can truly know someone's heart.
It's so true. It's a good reminder that we often jump to conclusions about why people do things without really knowing the whole story.
It is. And I think this is where things get even more interesting. The RCW's final point. They go back to this idea of judging a religious group by its fruits, the positive results of its teachings. They've been hinting at it throughout the letter, but now they really make it the centerpiece of their argument.
Yeah, they use that classic analogy of a tree and its fruit, citing verses like Matthew 7.1820 and Luke 11.920. It's such a powerful image that really sticks with you no matter what your religious background is. They're basically saying, look at the good that we're doing, the lives we're changing, the communities we're building. Those are the things that really matter, not the accusations that are being thrown around.
Right, they're saying actions speak louder than words. They don't just say it, they give real examples of the positive growth and conversions they've seen. They even compare their positive work to what they perceive as negativity from the ICC, which is a bold statement.
It is, but it emphasizes their point. What you do is more important than what you say. And then they end with this invitation, encouraging anyone who isn't happy with the ICC to come and join the RCW.
It's a powerful way to end the letter.
Yeah.
So what does all of this mean for someone who's trying to make sense of this religious division? What are the big takeaways from this deep dive into the RCW's response?
Well, I think the RCW is challenging us to look deeper when we evaluate a religious group. It's not enough to just focus on what they say or what they believe. We have to look at their actions. What kind of impact are they having on people and communities? What are the results, the fruits of their teachings, so to speak?
It's a reminder that faith isn't just about words. It's about putting those words into action and making a positive difference in the world.
The RCW also highlights just how complicated it can be to interpret scripture. You know, different groups can come to very different conclusions, even when they're looking at the same text. It shows the importance of thinking critically, having open conversations, and being willing to listen to different perspectives.
It's a call to be more understanding, to move beyond simple judgments and approach these issues with humility, a sincere desire to learn.
This deep dive has given us a lot to consider. It's a fascinating look into religious belief, the challenges of disagreement, and the ongoing search for truth and meaning.
It reminds us that even within one faith tradition, there can be so many different interpretations and experiences. And engaging with these diverse viewpoints can truly broaden our understanding of the world around us.
And maybe the most important takeaway is the emphasis on looking beyond the rhetoric and focusing on the fruits, the tangible evidence of how beliefs are put into action and the impact they have on the world.
Well said. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring these questions and to keep diving deeper into the world of religious beliefs and practices. Until next time.